Close enough, as usual. Welcome, viewers, to Cady and Katie's first ever
Thanksgiving
double feature.
Yes, and in celebration of the
turkey
season and lack of movies that we can really go see at this moment in time, we decided to look into our backlogs and treat each other to a
autumnal
movie that, one of us has seen and the other has not.
Yeah, I mean, we really wanted to do something a little bit more interesting with this intro, maybe incorporating some
delicious
goings on in the background or something from like Katie's offering.
Or the classic, shaky cam kind of thing from James's.
I mean, I would have just settled for just buckets and buckets of
gravy.
But have you priced those things lately?
Yes, well anyway, it is 2020 and we're all making sacrifices. And we're all pretty much living in our own sort of personal
fall
movies anyway, so...
But you get it. Just use your imaginations.
2006, San Diego. Girlfriend Katie and shitty boyfriend Micah, pronounced Mika, have moved house over concerns that mysterious entity that has
Basted
Katie her entire life may be making a comeback. Is this presence real? Is Katie crazy? Is Mika an insufferable douchebag? All they have to do is go to the tapes in this found footage supernatural thriller. So Jens, what did you think about Paranormal Activity the first?
I've had a little time to think about it. I deliberately went out of my way not to write anything down in the interim. I didn't take notes during the movie. I will say that. I mean, the movie is what? 14 years old at this point.
2007, yeah.
Okay, 13 years. It was pretty much what I expected. I mean, there weren't a lot of surprises in it in terms of content. I mean, part of me figured always assumed that it was like a
Native American
instead of a
pilgrim,
but whatever, splitting hairs there. I thought it was fine. When it came out, the whole found footage and that whole thing hadn't really been done to
dinner
yet. I'm not those movies can still be good, but having not seen any more of these movies, I assume that they drove it into the ground really hard over the course of 5 sequels at this point. And Blair Witch was the first one, really.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it. It felt real. Some of the effects, while simple, were compelling. That moment when she's getting dragged out of the bed, and I was like, how do they even do that?
Yeah.
Was pretty cool. I'm not sure that I needed to see this movie, but having seen it, I don't regret those 2 hours. So, and what about you, Katie? You've seen the movie before. Did you see it in theaters originally?
This first one I don't think I saw in theaters. The second one I did. I mean I liked it. I've always I've never seen Blair Witch, weirdly enough.
Really?
I know, yeah.
Huh.
But like that sort of found footage thing, I do enjoy those movies generally too, just because in at least the ones that I think are most effective, there aren't that many like digital effects or anything. It's
they
practical.
have to be really
it just feels more
subtle.
personal, obviously, because it's found footage.
Yeah, it's whole movie.
Cloverfield, for example, although that one did have...
That one definitely
yeah, but,
had a lot of effects.
But that feel of it,
But,
I liked this movie a lot when I first saw it. I saw it a couple times. This was the first time I'd rewatched it in a while. A lot of the big scenes I remember too are from the sequel. So I mean, I have some information too, but I don't want.
Oh, and I suppose I should probably ask you, because this is an opportunity we come across surprisingly rarely. Rewatching it this time, compared to the first time, does it hold up for you, or?
It does. Yeah, I mean, it does have at least 3, maybe 4 other sequels.
I think there are at least 4 or 5 at this point.
I think as it got further along too, it was more branching off and doing weirder things. The second one I liked a lot as well. But yeah, no, I feel like it did. And maybe even because of how, more intense and crazy the more recent films were, or have gotten. I've heard, I've only seen the first 3. Yeah, no, I think it did. I liked it.
I should probably also add at this point that I am open to watching at least a few of the sequels. I certainly didn't dislike the movie enough that I don't want to see any more and see how quickly it gets bad, because I'm sure all movies get bad at some point if you make enough of them. Name one franchise that hasn't at least had a low point after probably the 3rd sequel. 3 is about the maximum shelf life before it starts to get bad, in my experience.
I'd have to think about it, but nothing springs to mind.
Yeah. Okay, so while we have been sort of skipping over casting and things like that in the past. We do. If there's one person that's probably not going to come up in conversation when we're just talking about the movie, it's the directors, the writers. So we should probably point out, written and directed by Oren Peli, who, at least according to my research, was responsible for the first 3 in at least either a director or writer capacity. And yeah, I mean, like, I couldn't really find anything else that he'd done outside of this like, I guess he did Insidious, which is another horror movie I have not seen.
I liked that first one. I didn't see the second one.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that he cut his teeth with this movie. Probably, I don't know. I didn't bother to write down when Insidious came out. It might have been before this, in which case he cut his teeth with that one.
I don't feel like it was before 2007.
I don't think so either. And so yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the fact that both of us didn't hate the movie means that he did at least a pretty good job. It's also worth noting that the 2 main characters are played by Katie Featherston and Mika Sloth, same name, so it's sort of like implied that like they're the actual people. Sort of just a subtle nod, but a
that's what happens when you got a found footage movie. It's really
exactly.
nice.
It's like if how are you going to viral market if people are like, that's not your real name?
You're walking down the street and someone's like, "Yo, Katie," and you don't answer. Fake, man, fake. Yeah. Now it is almost 15 years old, and there have been several parodies and like nods to movies about this too, but spoilers are coming up. Just so you know.
Just to be fair, if you're like me and you haven't seen it, but to be fair, it's also your fault. So.
Well, during the watching of the movie, I didn't really take notes because, I mean, I don't really have genuine first reactions because I'd seen the movie before so long ago.
It also was sort of impromptu. We weren't sure when the evening started that we were watching that movie, so she didn't have
my notebook. I mean, I guess I could have taken stuff on my phone, but that would have ruined the
family
atmosphere.
Well, it's slower. It's slower.
But, I mean, I sort of mentioned it before, too. Generally, I really like the found footage sort of thing because it makes it feel, like, more real and, like, more personal.
Yeah.
And just, I'd forgotten, because, you know, movies have done that now so much and rely so heavily on, like, jump
yams
and stuff that, like, this earlier version of it didn't really, and I'd forgotten that I appreciated it.
It took a lot longer to sort of, like, to really start getting
hungry.
Like, enough that one of my first notes that I'll talk a little bit more about in a second is that, like, for a while, it really seems like she might just be, like, crazy or you know, just she's somehow ill, mentally ill, or experiencing something. And Micah's skepticism is actually kind of understandable. He's still a dick. Make no mistake.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mika.
His
name is spelled M-I-C-A-H. We watch with captions on. It's spelled M-I-C-A-H. That's Micah. It's always been Micah. Why is his name Mika? But as I was saying, yeah, at the beginning of the movie, I totally related to Mika and his skepticism, and could even, you know, first of all, regardless of whether or not you believe that it's happening, you should still be concerned for your girlfriend. Second, once boards start moving on their own, on camera that you have, a camera that you set up and recording, you don't poke the bear. You're done. Just leave the house.
Yeah, well that happened a good deal into the movie as well with the
charcuterie
board. In real life, like I won't mess with the
charcuterie
board. I'm just saying, who knows? Like just in case, but like. That was also at the point where he was an established douche because he kept like she was like
that was probably about halfway through the movie, and it was clear that he was kind of an asshole that didn't really believe that anything was going on.
I'm just trying to think of like specific moments too, that because again there are a couple moments that I'd forgotten were from the sequel and not necessarily the first one. But
don't spoil it for me.
I'm not going to spoil it for you. Although it does have to do with a paranormal activity that happens, so I'm very sorry.
Well, that's the name of the movie.
A lot of the notes that I kind of wrote down now were just like interesting facts about like the movie, like the production wise and that kind of thing. And then just sort of like how at least the first 4 movies relate to each other, just because it's interesting because they do like a kind of flip-floppy thing.
Where like they follow one character and then they follow.
Yeah.
This is just from going on IMDb and like looking at credits. I sort of got the impression that like one of the later movies is Mika after the fact maybe, but there's also Katie has her own. She's in one of the. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, without like becoming too spoilery, like this first one is Katie and Mika. The second one,
Maggie and Kika.
has to do with Katie's sister, who we saw briefly in this one, like just visiting.
Played by the same actress?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I believe so.
Love it.
But yeah, so it focuses kind of on them. And then the third one is a prequel kind of thing, which is them as kids, and then the fourth one, which
played by the same actresses?
Yes, as children, they're played by the same.
I thought that they just put on little girl clothes, and yeah, that's acting.
Yeah, the fourth one, which I hadn't seen, apparently is a sequel to the second one in that it relates to that story from the second one specifically. Which again, I'd only seen the first three because at that point I was like, I've seen enough, and it kind of. Yeah,
at a certain point, movies also kind of run together. Where it's like, even if the movie's not bad, it's like they run out of ideas, so it's
sort of like how when the Saw franchise, the first one was great, the second one tied in, and then I was like, I'm done.
After the third twist, you're just like, okay.
Well, and they just started getting, like, it just made me sick to watch. But anyway, different franchise.
That should have been happening from the beginning.
Oh, no, well, but I mean, like,
that's what those movies, those are
food
porn.
Those had
just shy of Clive Barker.
Those had, like, the plot to them, too, where it was, like, the introduction to the character, like, what, all that stuff. The second one tied into it, and then it just was, in my opinion.
I'm thinking about Saw. That first one was so simple.
So good.
So minimalistic.
So good. But anyway.
And plus Carrie Elwes.
So, but yeah, so I mean, that was just, excuse me, chicken. But yeah.
Cucko.
Oh, he died.
He's gonna come back with all his friends and beat the shit out of him.
Oh! So it's interesting too, because at least for those first three that I did see, like the tie-ins and the way that like it went to it happened, it was interesting. They don't well, they do a lot of sequels. I was gonna say they don't quite do things like that now. Usually when they do movies like that, a lot of the movies they do now are just remakes of other things. So
I only need to make $1,000 more a month to rent this house outright. So maybe check out our Patreon page, and we'll see what we can do. Anyway, it's a really stupid point that I'm going to use to sort of veer away from the more academic, thoughtful analysis that Katie was offering.
I'll bring it back. Don't worry.
A little while ago. Is it just me? Or it probably is just me. I'm weird. I know I'm weird. I've accepted this. But do normal people actually sleep with the door open?
I don't.
Okay, so at least but what about you guys? Normal people. I don't know why you're watching this if you're normal. Probably out going to parties and having sex or whatever. What do normal people do? The point they sleep every night with the door to their bedroom open. Granted, I know it's their house. There's no reason to believe there's anyone else in the house. I would think that closing the door might at least give them like a mental feeling of being a little bit more secure, especially considering what they're dealing with. Obviously, I have no reason to believe that whatever this thing is couldn't walk through things. It probably doesn't actually, because considering how much we've seen it interact. One of the first things it does is interact with the door. Ever so slightly.
I think the only time I ever slept with their door open is when in my old house when I was in one of their attic rooms and I literally didn't have a door.
Well, yeah, and when I was a little kid, it was different, but that was because I felt safer because my parents. But as an adult, I can't imagine sleeping with my door open, even if I didn't have housemates.
That said, we had I'd go up the stairs to the kitchen, led up to the attic. The room was right here. There was like a little landing, and then there was like our regular attic where we had storage. That door had to be closed, and the bottom door had to be closed. So I guess technically my doors were closed, but like. And
in some cases, maybe it's a question of circulation. But that looked like a climate controlled house.
Oh yeah.
To me,
for sure.
You know, there was no. They were sleeping with the door open because they preferred it, which is freaking weird to me. Weirdos. Completely bonkers insane.
Ugh, yeah, no good.
Especially all things considered. It was a little distracting for me because at some point I kind of realized I was like, the main reason they're sleeping with the door open is because the director wanted them to sleep with the door open.
So you could see shit going on in the background.
But
or not see stuff and just seriously feel like you see stuff.
If you have something to say on this matter, even if it's just I sleep blank, please leave a comment because I really want to know, and I don't have the resources to poll people outside of this.
I'm just trying to think of like different instances that I could bring up real quick.
My next speech is about Ambien.
Ambien.
Well, I'm serious. It's at a certain point. There's that. It's probably like the second or third incident of weird stuff happening. One of them, she kind of gets up and she stands in one place, like half asleep for a long time.
Classic.
And then like walks out the door, goes downstairs. Mika finds her outside a little while later, just like kind of like sitting there in a comatose state. And at that point, I was like, literally everything that's happened at this point could be explained by like sleep medication. Not all sleep medication, but Ambien in particular is known for people like getting up and doing everyday things and making food and even driving sometimes and not remembering it in the morning.
The her standing over him thing was like, I don't recall like another movie at the time that had done something like that, but that's like one of the most iconic like moments of the franchise.
Really, because objectively, it's not that weird. I mean, it's weird, but it's not like it's just a woman standing over a man for a little while.
But like not moving, just sort of like gently rocking for like hours. It's just.
Like when compared to some of the stuff that happens later in the movie.
Well, yeah, but.
It's like.
But
that's actually kind of tame.
It was one of the first like big moments where you were like, oh, okay.
Something weird's going on.
Yeah.
And specifically, the weird thing that is going on is that she needs to get on a different sleep medication.
Yes.
At one point, Mika does specifically reference her taking pills, or at least suggests taking a pill, which I think was the moment that I realized that could be an explanation. I don't think he says Ambien. I think he just says pop a pill, go to bed, we'll see what happens, or something like that. And yeah, like that was. Because, like I said, for most of the movie, the first half of the movie, a lot of it could be explained by that. Obviously, that's not what they were going for, but on some level, that actually makes it better because you need to be a little bit skeptical in order to sort of slow build toward what's going on.
The uncertainty of like which way it's going to go until it like finally like flips.
And I have some theories. I have some more interesting, thought out theories on that. Literally, I have one really good one that holds out literally until the last shot of the movie. And then it falls apart immediately. But I'm going to hold that for the finale here.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Expanding on Mika being a douche, which we've already talked a little bit about. I went back and I rewatched a little bit just to like find the bits that I was talking about, and I referenced in my notes. At one point, he literally says, "You're too cute to be talking." Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know these people. They're in a relationship. Could be an inside joke. It's probably an inside joke. But that still sounds like a really, like, from the outside, that sounds like a really douchey thing to tell your significant other, especially in modern times. Maybe in 2006 it was different. It was different. Women still weren't people, so they were basically sexy pets. Don't quote me on that. Again, I'm doing a bit. Katie, oh my God, I'm setting myself up for something terrible here.
It's just a bit. It's fine. They don't even really have him start out as like someone who is like super sympathetic, and then because of the stuff happening, like starts acting this way. The thing that jumps to mind is like Cabin in the Woods. Chris Hemsworth character is like, a bit, like just a regular, like what?
That was Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I need to watch that movie again.
But like he's a good guy, like joking around and stuff, and then like as the movie progresses, because of the things that are happening, like he changes to fit like that stereotypical thing. Like there are things like forcing that to happen. And in this, he's just kind of
he's cracking wise from the very beginning, and he just even as things escalate, he actually gets worse.
Yeah.
A psychic comes in and says, "Don't antagonize this thing.
Let's get
charcuterie
forward."
And he's like, "I know what I'll do. I'll make a video of me making fun of Kulashku the Destroyer or whatever." I made that name up. Not canon. And yeah, well, he just becomes an antagonist. It's one thing when you don't believe it's there. Still an asshole move because your girlfriend believes it's real and you should at least care. But once it's very clear that something's going on, you're just like, eh.
Well, and even then, too,
and I take nothing seriously, so this should mean something coming from me. Yeah. I also don't live in a movie, so.
Well, I think the thing about that part of it that annoyed me the most, and I'm sure it was, intentional to the character too, was like when it really bothered her, and she was like, "Dude, stop," and then he didn't.
Yeah, she does eventually reach a point where she's like, "No, you're being an asshole."
But anywho.
But not soon enough.
No.
And she should have. Well, I can't. At that point, she may very well have wanted to break up with him, but it's still having the company of a douche when you're dealing with what she's dealing with is actually probably preferable to being alone. But she has a sister who apparently has an understanding of what's going on at least some level. Having not, but just based on. Anyway,
don't worry, we'll watch at least the second one.
I did at one point say something about why didn't the powder move when they put the baby powder on the floor to like sort of see if they could get footprints and stuff like that, and then like we're watching it from the camera that's at the foot of the bed and you can see the footprints appearing, but at no point because it obviously stepped in the powder, but there's no like. I get that there's the effects budget was probably limited.
So, actually, about the effects budget, that's a note. Just while I was on Wikipedia looking up like the sequels and whatnot. Initially, the movie was shot for film festivals and stuff, like low budget.
It shows, not in a bad way.
Well, for $15,000.
I have no frame of reference.
15,000.
Now I know what 15,000 means. But I know how much $1 is, but
right. No, but like very.
And I know that like blockbuster movies can have budgets of well over $1 million.
Yeah. So it was shot for 15,000 initially, and did like the whole film festival, like small movie run, and then Paramount acquired it, and I don't know what the initial cut was, but they spent about another 200,000 just kind of like going in and making it like theater ready.
Nice.
And then when it was released in the U.S. and then internationally, it made 193 million worldwide.
That's a lot more than 15,000.
So it was written in Wikipedia as like the most profitable film, like return wise. Yeah. Jeez. So I mean, considering that too, like.
Yeah, that's I mean, especially, again, I'm not even really throwing stones here. It struck me, and I know that I said it out loud when it happened. I was like, why can't we see the powder movie?
Yeah.
Not really that much of a criticism, because there was also powder out in the hallway that we couldn't see. That maybe it stepped in that and managed to step over the line at the door.
Or maybe it was just like.
I'm glad I brought it up though, because I learned something here. So.
I like movie facts.
So I mean, my last note is my out there fan theory that I'm sure many people have already thought of in the past 15 years, but I didn't read those.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I had a couple notes about the making that. Well, that was it. I mean, but those were only the really things that I wrote down because I had seen it before, and the point, at least this time for me, was
more
to
about
expose
learning
you to
about the movie
so.
and then teaching me. Yeah.
Tell me your theories.
Okay, so and this holds up. Right up. We've already established that Mike is kind of a douche.
Yeah. Mika?
Sorry, yes, Mika. For a little while, I didn't actually think that this was what was going on, because I didn't think the movie necessarily had that scope, but it would have been really good if it had. First of all, gaslighting is a popular tool in
festive
movies. Telekinesis, less popular, more expensive. Also not uncommon in
festive
movies. So for a little while, and granted, there's a little bit of a problem here in the sense that supposedly this entity has been following her for her entire life, but we don't know to what extent. I get the impression that this incident is far worse than anything that's happened before. Growing up, it was mostly just waking up in strange places, hearing voices, stuff like that. She might also need some medication for that, but. What if Mika was just an asshole boyfriend who also happened to be telekinetic?
And wanted to
And he was just fucking with her for the whole movie. It would explain a lot.
Interesting.
But then, of course, you get to that last scene, and she ends up throwing him, like, across the house. And I think...
stuffing him.
I don't remember exactly. It's implied that he died.
Leftovers.
Was found, I think the police thing said.
And then her face does that thing. So clearly there was some external entity, whatever. But I was pretty proud of that when I thought of it.
That would have been quite the twist.
It would have been a different movie.
If the movie was made today, that very well might have been...
Yeah, it's subverting expectations.
Yeah.
This movie did not subvert expectations particularly at all. It was exactly what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And I would not have ever watched it when it came out because I didn't start watching movies until I was probably 23, 24. Because I got traumatized as a kid because I was at a birthday party where the birthday boy wanted to watch Child's Play 2.
Oof.
I was like 7.
No, not a good one for a 7.
Messed me up hard. And then I was like, I don't do movies until I was in art school, and one of my art teachers, like for the first
November,
he would give like a little presentation at the beginning of every class. And for
November,
he did like presentations on films. He talked about The Shining, and talking about framing and all the symbolism and things like that. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Other stuff like that, and I was like, you know what? I'm old enough. I think I could probably handle this. And since then, I've been watching movies like all over the place. Love them.
Yeah, the found footage again is something that I think even like when this came out, like I was super into because there was a series on YouTube called Marble Hornets, which It's about like this guy who with a couple of his friends, they want to, I forget even what the movie that they were trying to make was about. He kept noticing things in the background, and it became like it was like one of the first, at least that I recall, big like Slender Man. And I saw it a couple years after it was made, but it was like an installment thing.
It couldn't have been before Paranormal Activity.
No. It was after.
Okay. The way you started this story, it almost sounded like you'd been aware of it in high school.
2013 or 14. Like it's much more recent, but.
Because I didn't think the Slender Man thing was a...
No. But, like, that sort of, like, found footage, that was done really well, especially considering it was, like, a YouTube thing, because he would, like, go out and, like, hunt for stuff, but he became, like, super obsessed with it. I would actually recommend that, too, if people, like, want to...
Cool.
Like, a YouTube rabbit hole kind of thing.
I'll see if I can find it. Put a link in the description.
Yes, but anyway, I digress. Found footage. I've always kind of, I think, been into...
Autumn.
But especially recently. Like, the more psychological the
Season.
two, the better.
Yeah. Speaking of found footage and psychological...
Autumn.
Yeah.
Our next film has not really any of those things.
Season.
It's pretty straightforward. And the footage is not found.
No. I mean, it's found, I guess, if you think about it being found in a camera after they've shot it.
It's not really found, though. They knew someone put it there and told everyone that it was there.
Fair.
And then... Though, in the original... I assume because nobody could... Evil Dead!
Evil Dead!
Addict in recovery Mia decides the best way to beat the figurative
Pilgrims
of chemical dependency is to hole up in a cabin with a bunch of literal
Pilgrims
and also 4 regular human friends. It goes about as well as you'd expect. But there's a lot of the great
Cranberry
effects that made the originals classics. Also chainsaws.
Ugh, chainsaws.
Once again, should probably offer a spoiler warning, even though this movie is not as old as Katie's, of course, but 7 years. Probably seen it at this point. Also, you've probably seen several other variations of it, so just... But if you haven't, and you plan on watching it, just... Yeah, you get it. Oh, just to be clear, this is... In case the trailer you just watched isn't a dead giveaway. This is the 2013?
Yep.
Yeah.
An Evil Dead giveaway?
Nice. 2013 Evil Dead, not to be confused with The Evil Dead, the Sam Raimi 1980 some year. Might have been 91. It wasn't that long. It wasn't as old as I thought it was. Original. Directed by Fede Alvarez. The only thing I recognized of his work was, I guess, he directed the Girl in the Spider's Web, which I guess is the 4th of the Klieg Larson girl with dragon tattoo.
Oh, okay.
Written by Rodo Sayaguez, who's a frequent collaborator of his. It should be noted that Sam Raimi, while not directly involved in this movie per se, was a producer. And obviously, he was responsible for the first 3 that this was based off of. Everybody else, correct me if you might have recognized people, was relatively obscure, relative unknowns. Something I forgot to bring up when we were talking about the last movie is also like these were not actors that had really appeared in anything else at the time, and pretty much have only continued to appear in those franchises since. Jane Levy? You can never tell. It's Zachary Levi, but it's Eugene Levy.
Well, Zachary Levi is isn't it?
Good point. The point is, Jane Levy, I guess, if that's the logic that we're following. I'd forgotten that she played Ash, quote unquote, in this movie.
Ash.
Which I will talk about ad nauseum. But of course, obviously she's been in a few other things, but the most notable and most recent would obviously be Zoe's Infinite Playlist, the sort of smash hit of quarantine this year. Perfect timing on that one.
Finish watching that.
It was really weird watching this again after having watched that entire first season. She didn't sing once.
It didn't click in my brain at all that was.
Well, I know. I had to explain to Katie. I was like, she is also not. She's not rocking her signature ginger mop either. So that kind of complicates things. But it was it was bizarre. Oh, she also played Jackie Torrance in Castle Rock, and I assume Jackie Torrance is in some way related to Jack Torrance.
Huh.
Having not watched Castle Rock.
I've seen like an
episode. Or know anything
about
about it, but I know she does the Stephen King thing, so.
Oh, Shining.
And she also, I guess, was the lead in Suburgatory, which is a show I've heard the name of before, but I know nothing about.
I did not.
But the point is, she was in this movie, and I had no idea, even though I saw it in theaters with Will and a mutual friend of ours, Phil, back when it came out. It would have been weird for me to see it in theaters any other time.
You know.
So, Katie, what did you think of director-writer Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead?
It was interesting. Well, I guess in this case it doesn't really apply. I was gonna say it's like one of those things where like it's been played off of so many times, but I mean that would have been the original that I would be referring to for that because it's again 2013.
I should also ask just as a preface for all of this: how familiar are you with the franchise up to this point?
I had seen like bits and pieces of the original Evil Dead. I've seen Army of Darkness many times. I actually like watched that one when I was younger too, because my dad would watch it and I would just watch it with him. So most of my...
Your dad seems like a cool guy.
I would also watch him play Doom all the time.
Your dad seems like a cool guy.
But yeah, so I mean, Army of Darkness I'm much more familiar with. So I mean, I
watched a little bit of Ash versus Evil Dead. Yes?
Well, that's true too.
Also
yes,
pretty
yes.
good.
But so I mean, like I know of the universe and everything,
okay.
but like the specifics of Evil Dead, I've only really seen like other movies that kind of play off of the, a bunch of friends go to the cabin in the woods and stuff.
I can't think of any other movies that fit that trope. I don't know what you're talking about.
Cabin in the Woods. It's never been done before.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I mean, and again, familiar with the universe. I'm trying to remember if I had seen all of the original Evil Dead. I'd seen parts of it.
It doesn't sound like it's from what you're talking
about.
Yeah,
no, it's... Regardless. How did you find this movie, the Evil Dead?
It's not the Evil Dead, it's Evil Dead.
Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead was the first one.
Evil Dead 2?
I did not remember almost it. I thought I remembered more than I actually did. I can obviously get into more details later, but it was definitely, when compared to the originals, it was definitely more of a straight up
Thanksgiving
movie. I have since, after we watched this, and we were preparing for this, I went and rewatched all three of the originals. And it was in my rewatching that I realized just how unfamiliar I actually was with this franchise. I remembered myself as being more familiar than I thought I was, because I really love Ash vs. Evil Dead. Great 2 seasons of television, just delightful. But then I was thinking about it, and if I'm being honest, I before this, I don't think I'd seen any of those movies more than once.
Wow.
Now, granted, the first one, which was obviously the inspiration for this one, mostly, is... The second one is basically the first one, but more refined. The plot is very similar. It completely ignores the first one, like it didn't happen, despite featuring Ash. And of course, it ends with him... I can't believe how little of Army of Darkness I remembered. I remembered, this is my drum stick.
Yeah, classic.
And I remembered there being skeletons, and that's pretty much it. And to be honest, I was shocked to find... It's a completely different movie. There's no similarity in tone. It's like it's more like a Bill and Ted movie than it is an Evil Dead movie. They talk about the Deadites in passing, but even the worst villain in it kind of looks hokey. Great movie, don't get me wrong. It's silly. I thoroughly enjoyed rewatching it. But the point is, this movie,
yes,
mostly based on the first one, just in terms of overall plot beats and all that, I think it's a more effective
Thanksgiving
movie, if only because they had better means to sell it as such. More of a budget, better effects. It's definitely
tastier
than any of the originals. But yeah, I think I walked away from this not enjoying it as much as I originally did. So that's, yeah.
I can imagine that a lot of that initial like discovery of it is what probably made it stand out.
I went to see it in theaters with Phil and Will because I had watched the original 3 with those 2 people. RJ, I think RJ was there too. Obviously, at that point, it had been more recent that I'd watched them for the first time. So yeah, I don't know. The expectation, I was shocked to find out how different this movie was than it's weird because I'd never seen Katie's movie before. And it was pretty much what I expected. And this one I've seen before. And I walked in and I was like, that was different than I remember it being.
Yeah.
So.
One of like the first substantial notes that I wrote down is just going to a cabin in the woods. Like why is
just
it...
like that movie. Face Off.
Movie? You went to a cabin in the woods in space?
I don't know. I've seen it once.
Oh, it's a pretty good movie.
Is it?
Yeah. You've only seen it once.
I don't remember being all that impressed.
Like why is it something that has been done so many times? Because it's, I mean, if it didn't work, I mean, they wouldn't have done it this many times.
Obviously. It worked so well that Sam Raimi did it twice as a sequel to each other.
Well, and I mean, other people do it. It's a common thing. Like,
it'd be interesting to look at, like, what was the first movie that did it? Was it Evil Dead?
When was the original Friday the 13th? I'm
not even sure. That's a camp, though. It's a little bit different. It's not a group of friends.
But
you're right.
It's people in the woods,
Friday the 13th, I think, was
that
like
kind of thing. But
a couple years after Halloween.
I was thinking like why? Then at least for me, like why it's something that is unsettling to me too is because I went to like camps and stuff, like summer camps when I was a kid. So like I was out in the woods, like in cabins, like
4-H?
Sleeping. 4-H in Alton Jones in Rhode Island.
Pansy. I was in Boy Scouts. We slept in tents.
I did Girl Scouts.
It sucked.
Too. I also slept in tents. Anyway.
The cabin's the way to go.
So, there's that. We also, growing up, we had a cabin that we would go to, a camp, we called it camp, in New Hampshire, like, on a lake where we would just go, like, in the summer for a couple weeks. So I think, and I don't know if, like, everyone has had that experience, but I mean, like, it's...
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say no.
Well, I mean, it was...
Everyone's a very broad net to cast.
Or, like, enough people has it that it resonates on such a level that it's something that, like, can continuously be done. Camp, probably, like summer camp, probably
on some
more
level,
so.
yeah.
But just, like, it's one of those things that, like, it's when something like that is, like, so ingrained, like, it just feels like, you know...
It hits you on a visceral level.
Yeah.
It reminds you of your... It basically makes you a child again, which makes it all the more yummy.
Yeah.
In terms of homage, this movie did have at least a few visual homages to the original, which again, I noticed more of after I watched it and I went back and rewatched them. I was like, oh yeah, that kind of, that thing. I had forgotten how many times a tree basted someone in this franchise. I obviously remembered it it's one of the most iconic scenes in the first one. I knew it happened in this one. It happens in the second one. And I'd forgotten just how, like, kind of pornographic it was. I mean, not just because of the boobs, but, like, they show a lot more of, like, it's very clear that that's what's happening in the first Evil Dead. And
I was expecting it to be more...
Yeah, and then in the second one, they sort of move away from that. And then in this one, it's pretty quick and, like, almost, you could, if you weren't sure what was happening, you might be able to walk away not knowing exactly that that's what had happened.
I wrote, yes, the tree.
But apparently Sam Raimi has come out and openly said that he regrets having done that in the first movie, too. So that might be why. Obviously, he hadn't figured that out before he did the second movie, but he figured it out since then. And he was like, I shouldn't have done that. It's kind of gross. Or something. I don't know his exact reasons, but he has admitted that he's kind of not proud of that.
Fair. I'm, like, reliving the movie as I read through my notes.
Oof. Let's move past the tree stuffing scene as quickly as possible.
No. I mean, just specific... So, like, when they first get to the cabin and everything, and they all meet up, and they talk about, you know... It's interesting, because having not, you know, really seen the original and stuff like that, like, I wasn't 100% sure, like, the specifics of how it, like, unfolded. But they get there, and if like, she starts kind of doing, like, a little ritual, which seems like a spell kind of thing or something, I'm like, oh, is this what's going to set everything off?
Nope.
But it's just, you know, they're there so
it's
she
literally
can,
just the cheese, yeah.
Yeah, throw away all of her drugs, like, you know, do the whole withdrawal with her friends there to support her thing. But it was like, the whole thing was, like, just a metaphor, I think, for withdrawal, too. It could have just been completely side by side, because fighting here...
Pilgrims.
Like, this time literally, but, like...
Yeah.
It was literally spelled out by her nurse friend, whatever her name is.
Did I write Olivia.
Down? Olivia. I didn't like her. But, what?
Didn't like Olivia. She's a nurse. How can you not like her? She saves lives, Katie.
I wrote this down later, too. The way that she, like, until it became super apparent that, like, something actually was going on, just the way she treated me. It reminds me of a nurse I know.
Katie hates nurses. I think that's the point she's trying to make.
Specific nurse.
Yes. All nurses.
Just the one.
Specifically all nurses.
Just
Katie,
the one specific nurse.
She thinks they're trash people.
Anywho, literally though, like, it was, you know, this is what's gonna happen, it's gonna be blah, blah, like, it was basically like the thesis for the whole movie, just, like, laid out ready to go. It just was interesting.
Are you saying that the movie was formulaic?
I mean,
because
again,
I wouldn't necessarily disagree.
Well, again, like I sort of mentioned that before though too. Like it's especially today, there's not really like a truly original sort of idea.
Agreed.
And a lot of stuff.
And especially with something like this, where it's very clearly kind of an homage to an already existing films.
And other things already had like nodded towards the original too. So there's a lot of stuff like where it's. You watch it for the first time, but it feels like you've seen it already just because you've seen elements and other things.
Because you have, in bits and pieces.
Yeah, but I mean, I appreciate when things do it like that too, where like there's that, I don't want to say formulaic, but like where it's, basically, this is probably what's going to happen. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, I appreciated the fact that.
Oh, you appreciate it, okay. You weren't accusing it of being repetitive or dumb.
No.
Okay, so I spent... Like I said, I saw this movie in theaters. I spent so much of this movie, and I remember when I saw it in theaters, I spent a lot of the movie trying to figure out who was supposed to be the Ash. Like, who's the badass? Who's the one that comes out the other side? Because it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly in the originals who the Ash is. Because they call him Ash. It's very obvious. In this one, I remembered it being a woman. I was so sure that it was a woman. I was like, it's definitely a woman. Going into it this time around, and I remembered the woman maybe being a person of color. So when Olivia showed up on screen, I was like, I think she's the one. I don't know why I remembered it that way because it wasn't her. But yeah, I mean, basically, I thought the actress playing Olivia played Mia. I was also pretty sure that the character that was Ash was named Ashley. Couldn't be more wrong.
Everyone showed up and you were like, "Where's Ashley?"
Even Ash's name is Ashley. So and I was like, then they said everyone's names, and I was like, nope, I'm clearly remembering that incorrectly. And then Mia gets possessed, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I was thinking it was her, but now it can't be, right? Mm. And so then I assumed I was right. I was right in remembering that it was it was Olivia, the duskier character that I was picturing, and then she gets her fucking face bashed in with a sink or something. I don't remember exactly what happened. So then I was like, well, Mia's possessed. Olivia's
toasted.
Must be Natalie, the character that has literally done nothing for the entire first half of this movie. And then, I was sold on that for a little while because, she'd already picked up, the Chekhov's turkey carver. Because I definitely remembered that this person lost an arm, or a hand, just like Ash did. And she picked it up earlier in the movie, and then, there's that scene where she picks it up, and then she actually has to cut her hand off. And I'm like, okay, it was her this whole time. Well, it seems a little weird that they would make the main character do, basically a non-entity for the entire first half of the film, but okay. We finally have our Ash. And then she dies too. And I was like, okay, well, what the fuck's going on? I have no idea. And then I was like, okay, I guess it has to be Mia if it's a woman. But maybe I've forgotten so much at this point. Maybe it's one of the guys. Fucking Eric is a goddamn Terminator, apparently. That guy goes through so much shit in this movie. It just keeps on going.
Damn, go Eric, getting shit done.
Not usually what you expect from the nerd character.
Right there. He had quite the arc.
I'm not sure it wasn't really an arc so much as a point A, and then suddenly at point B. He goes from nerd to being a complete badass.
He goes from nerd who instigated the whole fucking thing, kept quiet about it like a dumbass, and then, got shit done.
But my point was...
Yeah, sorry.
No, not at all. My point was that... And then even Mia...
Pies.
And I'm like, well, now I have no idea what's going on. And then she comes back, and I was like, oh, okay, I was right the whole time.
Third time's the charm.
The movie's kind of a cock tease. Apparently for the first and second time that you see it. At least if there are at least 7 years between them. So...
Yeah, and I mean, that did give, a literal, third time's the charm, because she had apparently OD'd before the movie started one time.
Pied.
Yeah.
Pied.
That another time, and then came back for the third life,
also,
and then...
What the fuck was up with Eric making Chekhov's defibrillator out of, 2 syringes and a car battery?
Oh, no, that wasn't Eric, that was her brother.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't... John?
I don't remember his name.
David. And David was not lying when he said at the beginning of the movie that he would stay with her till the end, because he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then she
pied.
And then he pied.
Mm-hmm.
So he stayed with her till one of the ends, but not the real end.
Whatever.
Which will be when she inevitably
eats
herself after this. Because, come on.
Shit.
Fuck this movie.
But yeah, as far as her being the Ash, literally my last note, Ash would be so proud.
And then he was. He even said groovy at the end.
Yeah.
That's the post-credits scene, if you can even call it that. He had no reason to even be in the movie. I was a little surprised Because now that I'm thinking about it, because I've openly admitted that I'm actually a little bit ashamed of how little I actually know about the original trilogy. I've watched them each of the movies twice now. Remember loving them, but up until I rewatched them, I was under the distinct impression that I'd seen them more than I had. And then I remembered. I have watched Ash vs. Evil Dead several times.
Oh, so good though.
It's a very delightfully, lovingly crafted show that I will continue to watch. I'm a little disappointed it got canceled after 2 seasons because they were setting up some really fun shit. And I'm a little because obviously that show only came out, 4 years ago? Not that long ago. Well after this movie had come out. And in retrospect, I'm kind of... It's almost a little surprising to me that maybe they didn't sort of... I have to rewatch it again now that I've rewatched this to see if maybe they did. But I feel like because they sort of set it up as like a soft reboot, that A, maybe they were planning on doing a sequel. But also, you almost think like maybe they might like sort of like...
Connect it?
Yeah, just connect it a little bit through the show. I don't know. It was just a thought. But that show was so... I need to realize that.
I'm going to look something up again real quick.
Okay.
I found a thing before about whether it was actually a reboot or not, or a sequel.
There's nothing in this movie that means that it couldn't take place in the exact same universe. Because it was the same cabin, complete with the exact same stupid porch swing with the...
Okay. But yeah, so just in regards to like where it stands in the universe as well, sciencefiction.com is just the website that I happen to find it on.
Sure.
But it references a tweet where someone had tweeted at the director of this film just saying, I need to set an argument, is this a remake or is it set within the continuity?
Yes.
And he had responded saying, it continues the first one, the coincidence on events between the first film and mine are not coincidences, but more like a dark fate created by the evil book. Ash's car is still there rusting away.
Interesting.
So it's like it's not necessarily.
So because the second one was basically like we messed up with the first one, they took a mulligan and made
so this was like it can't escape.
So there's two.
This sort of series of events, like it's always like destined to happen when people
Interesting.
come here because it's like a.
Yeah.
But I literally just found that earlier today and I was like, oh that's interesting, just
Yeah.
for
Intriguing.
continuities or not continuity, universe's sake.
Well, one way or another, I with things like this, unless it's explicit that it's not in the same universe, I always try to tie them together just because I like that. I hate fucking complete reboots. They're just like, that's just backpedaling.
Yeah.
Just own your mistakes. Come on, Marvel. The Inhumans sucked. But if you ever cast anyone else as Medusa, I'll be pissed.
Not necessarily like a huge like point of, or to make or whatever, but just looking at my notes. Oh, Grandpa, no. Oh, Natalie, no. Oh, Eric, no. Just as people, Grandpa was the dog.
Oh, right.
Just as people were like...
Fed.
When things happened.
Literally all of them.
Pie.
Aw. But like the way it just was so sad. Eric, I was rooting for Eric. Like
Eric had like a nice send off considering all the shit he'd been through.
Well, considering
he
it was
just like
his
laid him down
fault.
peacefully in the water.
So he finds the Necronomicon wrapped in a bag with fucking wire.
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire. Jesus, barbed wire wrapped all around it. Opens it up, cuts the barbed wire.
It's a book.
I say, oh man, he's totally gonna get blood on it, and then it's gonna cause things to happen. Blood all over the book. But
It's a book.
It's the Necronomicon.
Name one. Well, you didn't know that. Name one book that you've ever read that it's been like anything like this is even.
A book made of human skin. I would never read.
It's just skin.
Regardless.
You have a leather belt.
Regardless. I was completely convinced in that like whole thing with him being the one to find it that he was going to be the first.
Pie.
Like I was 100% like that's
by all accounts. I don't think anyone expected him to last nearly as long as he did. In fact, I suspect most people believed he was going to be one of the first to
Pie.
No,
literally guy who reads the book first to
Pie.
Based on the four, there were 3 girls and 2 guys, which meant that a girl had to die first. That's kind of
fair, flip-flopping back and forward.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And I'd seen so in my travels through life, in the whole Necronomicon, the initial Necronomicon with H.P. Lovecraft and what have you. I had seen Army of Darkness when I was a kid, and I don't know if that's why when I rediscovered, H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu in my adult life, it resonated so deeply. But like those stories are like I love them very much. So like anything that deals with it, like I'm always interested in to kind of see how it goes, and just like there's one point in it, and multiple points, where, like, Eric, because, of course, he finds the book and reads from it and sees that it's pretty much mirroring everything they're going through.
The best question would
and
be...
doesn't say anything to anyone.
How?
How what?
Well, how is he reading from it?
Well, it's because someone has very helpfully gone through
That's
and
right,
written,
there were notes.
Written in fucking red
Because
pen.
I remember when I was rewatching the first two, I was like, it's really kind of clunky and obvious how, because they find the book but they can't read it, so they find audio recording of a guy reading the book also, like right next to it.
How nice of someone to go through the Necronomicon and translate it all in red pen for them to be able to read.
Red pen.
It was red pen. Or marker. It wasn't
cranberry sauce. Cranberry sauce.
The rest of the book was written in
cranberry sauce.
If they had taken it and put it into a pen.
Yes, they broke the Sharpie open and they emptied out all the stuff.
But
and
like,
carved turkeys.
Right. Obviously, these were not healthy people. And then,
anywho, it was
the
probably
point is,
people
I think,
from the beginning.
I think the important takeaway here is that Cady supports eugenics.
No. Just the...
That's all I heard. After you said H.P. Lovecraft, I was like...
Oh, he was a terrible, terrible person. I can still like the stories.
Yeah, no. It was 100% a joke. Cady is one of the nicest and wokest people I know.
See if I had any other book things. It was mostly that. I don't understand, like, that was my biggest thing, was like, just...
You also have to remember that
someone
you're a
gone through-
person watching a movie who's watched a bunch of other movies.
No, I know.
That's a really important detail to take. Because Mike, the entire time, Mike was sitting there saying, "Ooh, this is what I would do in this situation." I'm
Right.
like, Mike,
No, it's not.
you don't know. You might.
So
But there's no way.
I've only seen a couple episodes of Ash versus the Evil Dead, the show. Did
Is it
he...
still on Netflix?
I think it's on...
Watch the shit out of that
Did
show.
he...
Katie.
The Necronomicon is in that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not
It's
like...
literally
it's
the
not,
first episode.
It's not all written in red ink. Or red, like, whatever. So, like, are there multiple versions of the book? Or does the book, like,
Considering that
refresh
this
itself,
movie,
or, like...
this franchise has no regard for continuity at all.
But I mean, it would...
There's multiple timelines and universes. Just...
But it makes you think, like, just the nature of, like, the sort of mysticism that surrounds the Necronomicon generally. Like, does it decide to, like, just sort of... That's the sort of thing I think...
It literally opened a portal and sent Ash back to the medieval times.
Alternate medieval times with skeletons.
Yes, and cars.
And cars.
You say, are you implying that they didn't have skeletons back in medieval times?
Walking skeleton armies.
That's not what you said. You said the alternate medieval time with skeletons. Because in our world, when people died, they turned into chocolate in the medieval times.
Regardless,
This is what Katie's trying to say.
my original point was at least Eric redeemed himself.
Yes. Also, pulled a needle out of his eye.
Ugh,
Or
don't
just
talk
below his
about
eye.
that.
It was below his eye.
Ugh.
It wasn't like Detective Pikachu after the light shattered in her eye and we got to see her pulling the
Eye
chunk out.
things.
It was down here. It was
I can't
fine.
do eye things. Ugh. Ugh. Anywho, ugh. I wrote down, oof, that whole bathroom attack. Ugh. Ugh. If you find a book and it seems to be mirroring things that are happening to you and your friends, fucking maybe mention it. That's all I'm saying.
At that point, he may very well have been under the effect of the book, which would also explain why he was able to take so much punishment. He might have been like a vessel at that point who just happened to not have completely lost his shit.
I suppose, but ugh.
You read one word and you're compelled to read more. It's kind of like reading
That's
a David
true.
Grisham.
Who's to say, even someone who knew what they were...
I've never read anything by that person. David Grisham? Something Grisham.
John Grisham?
John Grisham!
Who's to say that even someone who knew what they were dealing with the book wouldn't fall under their thrall? It happens all the time.
He's a scholar. He enjoys scholarly pursuits.
Usually it's the scholars that fall into...
It's the search for knowledge.
Usually it's the scholars that end up going crazy, too.
It's almost like this movie has an agenda. I think what Fede Magoobaloo, or whatever his last name was, Fede Alvarez, was secretly saying that climate change is a hoax. That's the point. And you can quote me on that.
There's also, there's sometimes is like that one thing in a movie that just like sticks in your brain and like and while I just
Was
of
it a
course,
chunk of the sink?
no
Because that's stuck in Olivia's brain.
there was a sequence, and this also is just one of those things where like something is shot very well and like super subtly. There's a sequence near the end when he's like underneath the house, like going through like the half-flooded area and everything. Like he pans through something with his flashlight, and there's a box cutter sitting like on like either this table or ledge or something, and he like half turns and then turns back and it's just gone. And I immediately was like, oh my god, and like it just I don't like box cutters. Just as used as like a weapon in movies.
Katie
like,
does not approve of the 9/11 attacks. Put that on record. I'm on fire tonight.
I don't... Things involving eye injuries and, like, just box cutters and... I don't know what
about
it
a
is.
box cutter eye injury?
That's the worst.
Hmm.
Knives in general into eyes, no. Also.
Eye knife.
Anyway, it was shot very well. Like, it's super subtle, like, unless, you know, you have...
So subtle, in fact, that I did not notice it when it happened.
Oh.
Katie mentioned it. Like I said, I don't remember what I said after the fact, but Katie was like, "Yeah, the box cutter is
I
gone."
think I reacted
Really?
to it. It must have been because I literally was like, oh god, because I knew that was what was going to happen. But anyway, I wanted to get that off my chest because it's one of those things that like has been stuck in my brain since I saw it.
Like a chunk of sink or something.
Like a chunk of sink, just for a random example that has nothing to do with anything we've just been talking about.
So, we've talked about 2 movies at length. Katie,
Yes.
would you recommend Paranormal, Dead, or Evil Activity?
Yes, I would. So,
And or.
yes. So Paranormal Activity, I just think for the fact that it was, you know, at the time, like not the first found footage movie really, but like it really kind of set the trend for like that specific type of movie.
It was the second found footage movie.
I mean,
after Blair Witch.
there were others too,
Nope.
but I mean, like, well known. But
Just the 2.
regardless, just to at least the first one to kind of see like where things stemmed from, then absolutely, I would recommend it for sure. I mean, and
at this point, it's sort of a part of cinematic history.
yeah.
In a way.
And then Evil Dead. I mean, just that universe in general. Army of Darkness, I probably would recommend more so, if only just for like the fond memories of, which is a weird thing to say about any of those.
Yeah, but
movies.
again, tonally, a completely
Very
different movie
different.
from the rest of the franchise.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's a straight up fantasy adventure.
If like that specific like universe or type of movie is not your thing, then don't bother, because I'm generally these days not a fan of like the gratuitous like
Feasting.
that has nothing to do with any sort of like story thing. But you know what I mean? Like there are certain movies like where you get to a point and you're just like, I don't need to watch all of that stuff. I mean, it was definitely
You're not progressing the plot here.
Yeah.
You're not making me afraid. It's just gross.
Yeah, like
it's just making me sick.
If we hadn't sat down to watch it, I probably wouldn't have watched it. Unless, and if I were going through and watching that series, I probably would have gone with the original instead of the new one too. But if that's your sort of movie, yeah. But I mean, otherwise, I don't think you need to see it.
Agreed.
Whereas Paranormal Activity, I would say just because it was, you know, sort of like a trend-setting sort of movie, then I would recommend that one for sure. James?
Yes.
What about you? Would you recommend one or either or both?
I would say that my opinion falls mostly in line with yours, actually. Paranormal Activity was a movie that made enough of an impression that it's gotten several sequels. Sort of an early icon of the found footage
Thanksgiving.
genre. Are there found footage other genres? I feel like found footage is pretty much... You can just say found footage and it's automatically...
Thanksgiving.
It's like
I think so.
No one wants to see a found footage rom-com.
That would be interesting.
I'm writing that down.
We'll make our own.
At the very
sort
least,
of
it's a
movie.
comedy sketch. Yeah, like I said, it didn't blow my mind or anything like that, but for what it was and when it came out, relative to where the
Mashed potato.
genre has moved over the last decade and a half, I think, yeah, it's absolutely worth watching. Evil Dead, on the other hand, while a loving homage, clearly, to the originals, if I had to make a recommendation, I would strongly recommend just going and watching the originals. This movie was fine, but at the same time, outside of its relation to the originals, there's not a lot that sets it apart from other modern
Thanksgiving
movies. It has some beautiful cinematography and things like that. It's certainly not without its merit, but there's not a lot that makes it special outside of the fact that it's sort of like a soft reboot of a beloved, long-running franchise. So yeah, no, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I wouldn't de-recommend if it's that kind. If that's your kind of movie, yeah, you should probably check it out. I mean, you won't regret it, but it's like, yeah. Katie said it. Katie,
Is that it? Are we finished?
Post credits, post show. Yeah, it looks like it.
Cool, and it only took 59 minutes.
Flew right by.
Yes, it did. So fans, we hope that you enjoyed this first ever
Turkey Day.
double feature. And if you did, like, subscribe, Let us know in the comments how you felt about the Evil Dead Paranormal Activity shenanigans.
And as I always say, most importantly of all, if you enjoyed our stuff, please don't forget to tell your friends, share us with your family, loved ones, pets. I was going to say your children, but probably not, depending on how old they are. Just random passersby on your commute to work. You get the idea.
And of course, keep an eye out for more
Cady and Katie
film talks about movies of years past, because who knows when we'll ever get to go to the movie theaters again.
And also, at least a couple more
Savory
videos coming up right here before
November
is out on Under 655 Studios.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe out there.
You know you're never going to get this done by the end of the month, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, we still have the zombie Skittles, Over the Garden Wall, other things to do first.
Right. If I don't, I'll just dub over it in post, make it a Thanksgiving episode. Nobody will know the difference.
Alright.